Hello, I'm Luis Gomez, and I'm delighted to be on this panel and indeed very grateful for the opportunity to express the views of business at OECD on this important topic of market studies, and in particular on how they can be used to tackle emerging competition issues. I'm going to keep this intervention relatively short and simple, and I'm going to focus on three key themes. The first is that market studies that are aimed at shedding light on competition issues without intervening to remedy can be a very useful tool and are broadly endorsed by business at OECD. I think it is important that we understand and call out those benefits. Perhaps the most salient benefit of market studies is their ability to adopt a broader, more holistic approach to assessing market conditions. They are not focused on the past behavior of individual firms, but on markets as a whole in order to promote better competition in the future. They therefore have the potential to avoid the competitive distortions that can arise when investigations are initiated and enforcement cases are brought against individual firms on different timetables, as they can tackle issues across sectors in both a uniform and simultaneous manner. Advances in technology affect virtually every sector of the economy. Holistic assessments are therefore better suited to consider new business models, overlapping ecosystems of suppliers and customers, and the resulting interplay between competition and other areas. Think, for example, privacy, consumer rights. Whether and how competition agencies have oversight responsibilities for those other areas, or have ready access to other regulators and their thinking, will likely influence how successful the study can be. It may well be that the agency is not best placed to consider that interplay in detail. Successful studies provide enhanced knowledge of a sector and can offer new insights into the functioning of markets that firstly allow for targeted and better informed standalone interventions. Secondly, allow for competition advocacy. Let us not forget that often improved market outcomes come from changes to regulation and demand-side factors, such as different procurement practices or information to combat consumer inertia. Crucially, from a business perspective, they also allow for a better understanding for businesses about the context in which they operate, resulting in better compliance policies and procedures. By gathering input from all relevant stakeholders, market studies can also be a powerful opportunity for businesses to engage in proactive advocacy, providing full color on business drivers and challenges. The second point I would like to make is that market studies are not an inherently predictive tool of competition policy. Why do I say this? Well, much has been made and is being made of the ability of market studies to tackle emerging competition issues. On one level, one can see why. Market studies, unlike traditional enforcement tools, avoid the narrow focus on past behavior. Experience tells us that market studies have often focused on markets with known and observable existing systemic challenges. But it is true that they have also been deployed to consider emerging issues, given that their ability to assess market factors broadly can assist with identifying and diagnosing competition issues, even emerging ones. It is key in this regard that cases are selected wisely with a focus on those markets where the outcome of the assessment is most likely to be impactful. One would look to the general economic importance of the sector, to the special importance of the market for disadvantaged or vulnerable sections of the population, and indeed to markets where there are genuine knowledge gaps of how the market functions, and/or clear indicators of existing or likely issues that cannot clearly and suitably be addressed by enforcement action, i.e. an enforcement gap. In any event, the tough task of predicting, of projecting future market developments remains. In merger control, which invariably involves predictions about the future, and these predictions are perhaps predictably limited, there is ample economic literature on modeling for different scenarios. There is little to no economic literature on modeling future developments of entire markets. In fact, one of the strengths of market studies, their ability to take a broad, holistic approach, makes the ability to project into the future all the more challenging, given the large number of variables and parameters at play. In all, market studies are a very useful tool, but are they the silver bullet, the panacea, when it comes to resolving emerging and future issues in markets? Probably not. There is no doubt that properly conducted, they can inform policy and be a useful complementary tool, one that helps to identify and diagnose issues. That is their strength. To give you an example, some years ago, there were rumors and speculation of a new phenomenon, the patent assertion entity. There was concern and consternation. In reality, there was a gap in terms of knowledge and understanding. The US FTC conducted a market study, looked at business models and behaviors, and issued its findings, shedding light on the realities of the market, the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you like. It served as guidance to encourage the former and deter the latter. And so I come to my final theme, which in many ways is inextricably linked to the first two. The notion that related powers directly to impose remedies are unwarranted in the context of market studies. The ability for a competition agency to impose remedies on businesses in the absence of any infringement of the law is an extraordinary power. It may frequently conflict with fundamental freedoms, such as the right to property and the freedom to contract, especially where structural remedies are concerned. The belief that market forces and competition lead to better outcomes than government's diktat is a fundamental pillar underpinning free market economies. Market forces and free competition, moderated of course by legal prohibitions on anti-competitive behavior, create the background for the complex balance of incentives and rewards for investment and innovation against the risks of loss and failure on which free markets depend to work well. Let us be clear. The power to impose remedies off the back of market studies on the basis of no finding of unlawful behavior is nothing more than ex-ante regulation, market engineering, without the democratic legitimacy of a parliament or an assembly. In the case of emerging issues, moreover, the agency would be saying, one, that they can confidently and reliably predict what the issue will be and how it will play out. Two, that they can fashion a remedy that is both effective and proportionate to the identified harm. And three, that they can do all of that confidently without causing other adverse, unintended consequences. Now that is a bold, some might say audacious assertion. If remedy powers, the ability to engineer markets, are to be made available, the case for robust governance and adequate checks and balances becomes imperative. To paraphrase an antitrust maxim that is very familiar to business, with extraordinary power comes a special responsibility. On that note, I end, but if you are interested in more of our views, please do read our full submission and blog where, for example, we build on previous contributions to OECD sessions on best practice for market studies, and where we also discuss some of the limitations of market studies. Thank you.